Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes. John Peckman Podcast, Connecticut Valley School of Music and Dance. Beautiful downtown Portland, Connecticut. Come over the bridge, go through one set of lights, start looking left. Have your own podcast here in our beautiful studio. Come join me, be on the podcast with me. Do something with your life. You know what I'm saying? We're here with Mr. Keith LeBlanc, legendary drummer. You're a legend. Did you know that?
No, but thanks for saying that.
Hey, man, we're going to get to the bottom of it all. Among many other things, Keith LeBlanc, original drummer for the Sugar Hill Gang at the birth of hip-hop. His beats created a world. That's you.
Yeah, that's kind of helped spawn an industry.
Yeah.
I was a little part of that. Yeah.
Hey, man. No, that's awesome. And he's here now, going to tell us the entire story, no matter how long it takes. But yeah, killer. Tell us, go for the beginning. Where are you from?
I'm from Bristol, Connecticut.
Right?
And I got into drums pretty early. So I was, well, I'm severely dyslexic, and I was hyperactive. So something to bang on.
Yeah.
Seemed pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
I'm starting to realize we're all undiagnosed something or other.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Everyone's got a private war going on.
Yeah.
So my first musical thing, I think my mom locked me in a closet. I was having a temper tantrum. I was about 3 years old. I started banging on the door to get out. And I realized that if, I banged quarter notes, I could fit eighth notes in there.
Uh-oh.
Is that me?
Yeah, it might be. It's your mom calling. Wow.
This is an important call, and it'll have to wait.
Okay.
There we go.
They'll have to
I just
wait.
turned my phone
This is
off.
way more important than
Yeah,
anything
man.
you got going on.
Any call I get.
So you're in the
No one calls me, so they're all important.
Yeah, right. So you're in the closet. You're like, hey.
Yeah, so I figured out
That's
eighth
funny.
notes, and I tried to fit in 16th notes, and I tried to fit in 32nd notes, and against quarter
Sure.
notes, and I couldn't quite get to 30 seconds. And
Wow.
my mom let me out of the closet, so
Yeah, she's like, I better let him out. Sounds like he's got something going on.
yeah, so that was like the beginning, really, and then I saw Ringo Starr on TV, and
Yeah, right.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
So I
Killer.
made a little drum set,
Out of whatever was laying around.
coffee cans. They were good size back then. And
Yep.
kite sticks and stuff. And then it just went on from there. My parents signed me up for music classes at school.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother bought me a snare drum. And then
Yeah, that's cool.
they made me use whatever I had for a year, and then I might get something else. I fished a bass drum out of someone's garbage, and pie plate for a cymbal. And I was gone. My father built a big stereo. People did stuff like that back then.
Yeah.
And I had access to one, so I just, played with records
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah. Me too.
And took all the music classes I could take, and that was it. It was funny because being dyslexic and hyperactive, it's hard to fit in anywhere. And the drums, it was something I fit into immediately. So
Amen.
I think that's why I gravitated towards it, and I loved it. I could spend all day playing.
So that's where you're focused. That's the suddenly you could focus on something.
Right. And, then I think there was some guys in Connecticut really influenced me. I think the first real drummer I saw was Rob Godfrey.
Hey,
And
he's been here.
And he was playing with
That's funny.
big horn band. And they were at my high school.
Oh, wow.
And I loved the way he was so tight. The sounds were so tight.
Yeah.
And then
That's funny.
I started checking out Jack Scarangella, but he wasn't from Connecticut. He was like Buddy Rich
Yeah.
on steroids or something.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'd see him with the Fabulous Rhinestones. But Connecticut was a great place because you go to Bushnell Park, you see almost anybody.
Yeah, that's what they say.
You know, I'd go to Shabu and see Miles Davis, Weather Report. I saw Mahavishnu Orchestra at Wesleyan University. No one even knew who they were.
Yeah.
And I was sitting with about 4 drummers, and they were all breaking their sticks. I'll never play again, you know.
Yeah.
But it inspired me.
That's killer.
So Connecticut, I think because it's sandwiched between New York and Boston.
Right.
It's guys like you and me were able to see some fantastic players.
Yeah, it's kind of true. Yeah, it's like the tendency is about just Connecticut, but yeah, I know what you mean.
I remember I went to a club in Hartford. I forget the sax player that was playing. It was his gig. And I went in, there's this guy sitting on a chair, baseball cap, long hair, playing a bass like I've never heard before.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm mesmerized by this guy. And come to find out, it was Jaco Pastorius.
Oh, wow.
You know, before he hit
big.
Yeah. So
passing through.
You know, it was, and I went to Bushnell Park and saw Pat Martino play.
Yeah.
And Kenwood Denard was playing drums.
Yeah.
He's about
crazy.
19 years old.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Killed it.
Yeah, I bet.
And his hi-hat broke on him, kept breaking on him. So I went up, I couldn't take it. I went up on stage and fixed it for him.
Sure.
And, but yeah, there was lots of musical influences here in Connecticut.
Yeah, it's killer. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, we are lucky in a way, you know. I guess everyone wants to diss where they're from automatically, but when you think about it, we did pretty good.
Yeah.
You know. I missed the Shabu. I was just a little bit too young. It was over, but I can imagine. Like you say, you could see Miles Davis in Connecticut. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy.
I remember I saw, I went and saw Blood, Sweat, and Tears there. And Jack Scarangella showed up.
Yeah.
And he was drunk out of his mind.
Oh, boy.
And a guy gave him a piggyback ride to the stage. And he got on they let him sit in.
Yeah.
And they gave him a drum solo. And he was playing insane.
Yeah.
And they started taking the drums away one at a time.
Yeah,
Back then you could do stuff like that.
Yeah.
There weren't many mics on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they left him with the snare drum. He's still killing it. And then they put it all back. So I used that a few times when I had to. I stole it from Jack because that was a great move.
Yeah, that's pretty killer. Yeah, it happens. And then you must have ended up, you want to just get right into the Sugar Hill, like how did that happen? You must have got out of Connecticut at some point.
I played with I started playing with these show bands all over the country, you know, and it was, you know, you didn't have to, you know, you'd make money, but you're still close to what you love, even though you had to play cover tunes and stuff.
Sure.
And so when I was home, between those bands, I would go into Hartford and go to all the jam sessions I could find. And I was at one jam session, and this great drummer, he's dead now, Harold Sargent, died a couple of years ago. Okay. But he's probably the most sampled drummer other than Clive Stubblefield.
Oh, wow.
He played with...
I don't know who he is.
Well,
I gotta get my act together.
Harold Sargent, he played with the Skull Snaps, which is one of the most sampled records. He was the first one to go to Sugar Hill Records before it was called Sugar Hill Records. It used to be called All Platinum. And he used to go to Joe Robinson, who owned the place. This club in New York, the Blue Morocco. And Harold was from Dayton, Ohio. And he basically gave Bootsy his start.
Oh, wow.
You know, he's like...
I don't know who to... No, I must be it.
Well, Harold's like kind of underground.
Okay.
A lot of people
well, you know me.
I'm
going to research it down to the ground.
But he started a band with Skip McDonald's from Dayton and Doug Wimbish and Hubert Powell from Hartford, great keyboard player, and the horn section, Otha Stokes and Randy Boss, he's from New Haven, and Phil, I forget his last name.
And this would be about what year, approximately?
This is like 1978.
Okay.
And Harold came up to me in the club and he said, "I got just the boys for you to play with." He said it just like that.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to Skip and Doug, so I went and auditioned. I brought a bass drum, a snare drum, a hi-hat, and a cymbal. And I guess Harold put in a good word for me, because he was leaving the band.
Oh, wow.
This band, Wood, Brass, and Steel. And they were big at the time. Their music was, they used to use it for like Channel 30's background music for the news and stuff. And they'd cut a bunch of records. So I auditioned, and they liked me. We hit it off right away. So I started playing with that band. And then they got a call from Sylvia Robinson saying that she wanted them to come down to New Jersey and cut some tracks for her. And no one wanted to go, because last time they'd cut several albums there, and the money didn't turn out quite right.
Yeah.
You know, they
so
didn't
they're
want
just
to
kind
go.
of like, yeah, whatever.
So we were playing this place in New Haven called Leo's Welfare Disco. It was right next to the public assistance office in New Haven, and it was totally illegal. Get in with food stamps, you know. And
wow.
the DJs would always be talking over the beat.
Sure.
So me and Doug, we were getting ready. Our manager at the time, he used, what he thought was dancing was like an epileptic fit. So we used to wait for him to get a girl to dance with him and, you know, watch, because it was quite entertaining. And the guy put on Rapper's Delight, and I thought it was just the DJ talking over it. And then it kept going. And Doug was amazing. He said, "That's an all-platinum record." I mean, just from the sound of it.
Oh, wow.
He knew what studio it was from. We went over to the DJ booth, and it said, it didn't say all platinum, but it said Sugar Hill Records, and it had Sylvia's name on it. So then everybody wanted to go down there, because they thought, okay, there might be some money there.
Oh.
So we didn't cut Rapper's Delight.
You just cut something, and it became Rapper's Delight?
No.
Okay. So
Sylvia, when she called, that's what she wanted Doug and Skip to do. And Harold had said they got a really good drummer. And she said, well, you know, she wanted me too. But we didn't go down there. So she got this band from Pittsburgh called Positive Force to record the track.
Whoa.
And then...
Wonder who that was, because I'm from my family's from Pittsburgh. I wonder if I could figure
They
out
were a
who that
great
was.
band.
Yeah.
Absolutely great band. And they, you know, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And we went down there, and we went right in and started recording right away. And we recorded everything.
Because you knew it was
Rapper's
real,
Delight.
because you heard the DJ playing it. You thought, this is going to get out
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
it was, you know, we knew it was kind of groundbreaking thing, you know, it was different.
Yeah.
And it was a smash everywhere. you know.
Wow.
So, and we ended up recording everything else there. But the first gig we did with the Sugar Hill Gang, Sylvia had us, it was at Harlem World, and she had Positive Force there and us.
Wow.
So 2 drummers, 2 bass players, 2 of everything.
Why not?
And I thought I was playing with the Beatles or something. It's nothing but screaming girls. I never, you know, I was
Really?
thinking that Ringo might have felt like this.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And
Wow.
then we went back to New Jersey, and we went to do the club again, and Positive Force was not present.
Oh.
And I thought, okay, that must be an old school tactic. You want to get rid of a band, you have them both play the show one night, the other band learns it.
Oh, and whoever.
And it was easy to learn because Sugar Hill Gang only had 1 song.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So we would play Wood, Brass, and Steel tunes to make up the time till we recorded some more stuff.
So Sugar Hill Gang was who? Who was?
It was 3 guys that
Yep.
Sylvia had got together, Guy O'Brien and Wonder Mike.
Yep.
And Big Bank Hank.
Okay.
And they basically, you know, they were just put together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They weren't a real rap group.
Yeah.
And it took off. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
It was just one of those things.
So it was over. So it was Good Times originally.
Yep.
Okay. And they just kind of cut it up.
Well, Sylvia, the story that I heard
Yeah.
was, because trying to get something out of, any information
Yeah,
out
sure.
of Positive Force was difficult, because they knew we were there to replace them.
Yeah, right. So they weren't giving you any info.
So they didn't feel too friendly, but I did, made friends with the drummer, and he told me, he said they had him in the studio for a week trying to get as close to Good Times as they possibly could. And that's the studio. I mean,
Yeah.
it was pretty low tech at that time. It was probably good in the 60s, but by 79 it was.
I see it. So Rapper's Delight, that's not Good Times. It's like a re-recording.
Yep.
Wow. I never really thought about it. I never really listened to it too carefully. So they were like, we're just gonna jack this song. We're gonna have other people just play this song.
Yep.
Wow.
And I think the
And
story
and do the arrangement however they wanted it to be for the rhymes.
right. They got a DJ in to scratch in the that orchestra staff.
Yeah.
And I think that's off the Chic record too. But he scratched it and they layered it on 3 tracks.
Yep.
And they copied the track exactly.
And no one cared. Did they ever get? I don't know the story.
Well, Nile Rodgers, he paid Joe Robinson a visit, or he called him up.
Yeah.
And Joe Robinson said, well, if you want your money, come and get it.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
Joe was like a kind of a gangster.
Sure.
So
Sure.
Nile just left that alone till enough time had gone by where
right.
he could actually collect it.
And did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He eventually got what he was supposed to get.
Wow.
But it took a long time.
Yeah, I bet. Well, yeah. Probably came when he needed it. Just like, yeah, all right.
And
How
all
about
the
that?
records we cut, they wanted us, we had to cut a Sugar Hill Gang album, and they were trying to get tunes out of us, and Skip and Doug weren't giving up anything. And so,
Because they knew it would just be gone like smoke. Yeah.
Yep, so Sylvia got in this arranger named Jiggs Chase, brilliant arranger. And he brought his boy with him, Ed Fletcher. It went by the name of Duke Booty. And but he passed away a couple of years ago too. But brilliant percussionist, vibe player, lyricist. He's the guy that wrote The Message, actually, that record.
Wow.
And so their plan was to get their band in there and get rid of us. But we did a little jam with them, and they liked us so much they forgot about their own band.
Oh, hey.
And so Sylvia would see what they were cutting in the clubs, what the DJs were cutting in the clubs, what was getting everybody off, give it to Jiggs, and he'd write an arrangement for it.
Yeah, right.
And then, so we
Then
were
you
like
come in and do it.
we were like the human sample for
Wow.
like 3 years straight.
Hey, that's killer. And your approach was, did you understand what it ultimately would be, or you just like, we're just going to play this like a song or a groove, and let them cut it up, or like, did it change your approach at all? Are you just like, hey, a groove is a groove, just lay it down?
Well, really, I had only done a few studio sessions. Most of the work I had done was live, so I didn't have much experience doing that. And but I played with so many records over the years.
Yeah.
I was used to fitting in.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I'm the same way. I've learned from records, and then when it comes time to slide
Right,
in.
it really puts you in the zone of holding a band together.
Yeah, right?
And I think the first record we cut was for The Sequence, and that was before Jiggs had shown up, and it was amazing. We just came up with the groove instantly, and they rapped over it, and we drove home to Connecticut, and then drove back up after the weekend on a Monday and heard it on the radio.
Whoa.
That's how fast they got it out. And then after that, Jiggs came in. He would write arrangements. And he'd have charts. I loved him because he had charts. And he'd let us put our own ideas in to make it better.
Yeah.
And we'd always try and, whoever's track it was, whatever they were ripping off, we'd always try and play it better than the original track. And so
people would be going, hey, who are those guys?
right. And
Yeah, they might notice the difference and be like, hey.
I mean, the first thing Jiggs said to me was, you ever play with a click? And I said, oh, yeah, all the time. And I had never played with a click.
Right.
I was just lucky that
Yeah.
I could do it. And, I got to hear myself coming through the speakers. I'd do a take and I'd listen to it. And I'd go, okay, I rushed a little bit there.
Yeah.
I got to pull back there, and I would make the adjustments on the next take. So I had to learn really quickly.
Wow.
Because, I mean, the drummer that was there before me was Yogi Horton.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of good people.
Yeah, the late great. Yeah.
And, Yogi even showed up after we had been there about 2 or 3 years. About 2 years.
I must have watched his video 1,000 times, the Yogi Horton thing.
Yeah, because Skip and Doug had always told me about Yogi because they were in a band with him. They used to play in musique, push in the bush.
Yeah.
And so they told me about Yogi. So Yogi, by this time he had, done Diana Ross, Luther Vandross. He was like next call after Steve Gadd in New York. So,
yeah.
So he came. George Kerr hired him for a session, one of the producers there, and we had been recording a couple years there now, and he came in, and I heard he was in the studio, so I wanted to meet him, and he looked at me. He said, "Oh, you must be the drummer," because I guess they had told him about me.
That you're the only white dude in the room, like you.
Yeah, right. And
you must be.
And
him.
he said, "I feel sorry for you playing with these." I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but and he was really hilarious.
Yeah.
And then he went in the studio and cut the track, and I learned a great lesson because the track was real straightforward. 4 on the floor, bass drum, 2 and 4 on the snare. But his hi-hat was singing these melodies all the way through it.
Yeah.
So I immediately stole that from Yogi. And but Yogi, eventually, when I left Chevelle, I was playing with a bass player that he had played with. And he came to a gig, and I was really nervous,
Sure.
I asked him if he wanted to sit in. He goes, "Oh, you're not going to put me to work." He's a really funny guy. And I was doing this thing that I'd come up with during the disco era where I would play the hi-hat part and the snare drum part with one hand.
Sure.
And then I would do other things on the cymbal, improvise on the cymbal.
Yeah, why not?
Because it was such a boring type groove. And Yogi saw me doing that, and I heard him. He was right next to my hi-hat, and he goes, "I've got that now."
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then you just hear it on a hit record.
And then the bass player was telling me, he goes, "Yogi wanted to break your arms, man." So I took that as a compliment.
That's great.
But none of the bands, we went out, we kind of forged it because, guys were unplugging the power, duct taping amps on 10, messing up the monitors, anything to mess us up. But people responded so hugely to it.
Yeah.
We thrashed everybody. I think that's what the only people that got it actually were Parliament Funkadelic. George booked us to open up for them for like 6 months or something.
So he just was like, these cats they're doing it for real.
Well, the thing was, we got along with Parliament because the band could really play.
Yeah, sure.
They knew the rap thing was,
Right, that you guys were cats. Without that, you'd be a band anyway.
Right. So George, I think he understood that this rap thing was going to take off long before we did,
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. We'll get to that. Like, did you know when you were doing this stuff, did you understand, how long did it take you to kind of understand what you're doing? It was becoming a new thing. Like it was.
Well, to me,
or you just like you say, you're just doing the job. You're like cutting tracks. You're just kind of trying to get it done and get out of there.
We're just trying to make the best tracks we could.
Yeah.
And we really didn't know how long it was going to last.
Right.
And I was just really trying to be the best session drummer I could be. So I was more absorbed with being the best I could be because everybody was trying to get my gig.
Yeah.
So, but to me, it didn't seem like anything new. It just seemed like a natural progression of funk music, which I loved.
Mm-hmm.
One of the styles I really loved. And I was getting to record, and I was getting paid to record. So I was happy. I didn't really think much farther than that.
And the funkier you get, the more you're working. You're like, this is it's working out.
We were playing gigs with everybody. open it up for all kinds of people. And so I got to see all these amazing drummers every night. And I got pretty tight with Dennis Chambers.
Wow. Cool.
And I stole a lot of stuff from Dennis.
Sure.
Because every night,
And
Parliament.
he's playing with P-Funk.
Right.
Yeah.
And, well, he was playing with the Brides when we showed up.
Okay.
And then they had some drummer trouble, so they put him on with P-Funk.
Yeah, and that was all she wrote. Yeah.
And Dennis was, he was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd be in back of the drum riser every night, and Doug be in back of the bass amps because they had Skeet Curtis, amazing bass player.
Yeah.
And I think one of the bass players was giving George a hard time, so they asked Doug if he wanted to play for the Brides of Funkenstein.
Hey.
And when the other bass player heard that Doug was going to do it, he made up with George, whatever that
Yeah, right.
But I remember they really liked us. We'd go up on stage and they'd come over. It was a totally different thing. They'd come over and tell us jokes in the middle of the show. And
Yeah.
an amazing band, and you see like 20,000 people all moving at the same time.
Can't even imagine.
And I remember the bass player, Ski, he really liked the way I played. And one time I was sound checking, and I had worked out this thing at home where I was doing a reverse triplet with my left foot and my bass drum. So I was starting with the bass drum
Sure.
for the triplet, and then I was putting like a little 6/8 thing over the top of it, and I was experimenting with that. That was something I'd come up with. And I saw Skeet giving Dennis the elbow.
Oh, boy.
And whispered to him. Next thing I know, Dennis was like in back of me, and he said, "I'm going to steal that."
Right. Just like Yogi. He's like, thanks.
And it was a great compliment from like, a drummer's drummer. This great drummer wanted to steal something from me.
Well.
And I felt a little better about trying to steal everything I saw him do,
So you're like the hidden, you push things along without, you say, if Yogi took something from you, Dennis Chambers took something from you. That's pretty cool.
Every drummer you see.
Right. I mean, we all do it, but still.
Does something, it doesn't matter what level they're at.
Sure.
They all do something you haven't thought of because it's such an original instrument. No one approaches it the same way.
Right.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had students, they've come in and said, "Well, I did this with it." And I went, "Boy, that's a great idea."
Right. Yeah, that's my thing too. I just tell them, "Hey man, you know what? If we're trying to get something, your mistakes are equally cool. They're just different. So let's bag those up also."
Right.
Because, once you're in the zone, it's all good. You know, it's just you hear it different. That's cool. Let's keep that.
But, for a long time, I had a real competitive nature, and somewhere along the line, I lost that. I got to the point where I realized I realized I suck.
What?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I was always, my whole life and still now, I practice so I don't suck so bad.
Oh. Well.
And I'll never get where I want to be. So once I realized that, I was cool with it.
Yeah.
So I just remained curious about how far I can go. But, I mean, everybody I see, it's different. It's so different with the drums. When, you can be on the drum set, it looks like it's easy for you.
Sure.
Someone might think you're killing it. But you might be like a one-legged man in
Right.
a butt-kicking contest that night.
Right. No, I know.
Like, I see you play, it looks so fluid and so easy for you.
Yeah, but you don't know how many 50 times I ran that down before I turned the phone on and act like it ain't no thing.
Right. And anybody really good that I ever met, they always thought that they sucked. And they would always working on trying to get better.
Right. I bet you Dennis Chambers thinks he sucks, probably.
Well, Dennis is special, actually, because...
All right, well, he's the one.
I've asked him a few times. I said, because he was really sick for a while.
Yeah.
And he didn't play for a year.
Yeah, imagine that.
And he said when he felt better, he just got on the drums, and it was all still there.
Whoa. Yeah.
And I said, Dennis,
That's a gift.
that's a gift.
Capital G.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's one of a kind,
Yeah,
really.
well, hey, that's fine. If we're not him, who is?
Well-
like you say, some people, we all get what we get. Some people get more than other people. It's just a fact. You could work hard, but some people just have more, I guess.
I always just, I think playing along with records. And, I took lessons and
Sure.
everything. But over the years, I've gotten to the point where, I guess because I've done so much producing as well and all that time playing with music, it wasn't, and you know this, it wasn't any fun unless I learned the drum parts and I was right in there with the music.
Right.
And then I would improvise on top of that.
Right.
Then it became something special.
Yeah.
And so as a result, when I play now, I can't put a fill in or I can't play a note unless it helps the music in some way. So
I know exactly what you're talking about.
and if there's something not working in the music, I'll adjust to help that.
Yeah.
And I'll be very uncomfortable if it's not all clicking.
Yeah.
I think the best fill I ever did was finding a place to put nothing.
Yeah.
A space.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
That's so funny. I'm not just agreeing to agree. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's funny. It's a funny thing. Yeah. Because we're making the music, well, I don't want to say better, but like you say, you're thinking like, well, then we'll talk about producing, but you're not just thinking like a drummer. You're trying to make the whole thing tie together. And like you say, if sometimes playing less ties it together, then play less, whatever it takes to get that groove, to get the thing going.
I went to this thing in New York. It was a gig. I was doing a bunch of drummers there.
Yeah.
I think Will Calhoun was there, and Zach Dangzinger, a few other people.
Yeah.
A guy from Lauryn Hill's band. And I didn't know it, but Lenny White was there.
Oh, boy.
And the Gospel Chops thing had just
Sure.
started breaking out.
Sure.
And so I asked the guys, I said, well, what do you think about this Gospel Chops thing? All the guys just started chiming in. And, they all had opinions. And from the back of the room, I heard, it's not music. It's just drums. And I look, and it's Lenny White.
Oh.
So I said, hey, Lenny, you want to explain that? So he went to the bathroom. He said, I'll be right back. He came out. And I told my son, who plays drums, he was with me. I said, you couldn't pay for a better moment than this. Pay attention.
Yeah, right.
And Lenny came out and explained what a drummer's job was, in his opinion.
Gotcha.
Which was to make the music work and feel good.
Right. The end. Yeah.
He said, that Gospel Chops, it's just drums. It's not music. And
It's for other drummers, kind of, is the way I look at
Right,
it. Like,
right.
it's cool, but it just...
But I looked at it where I said, well, this is a new way to approach the drums, which is, I like that. So I'd like to see what it would take to learn some of that.
Sure.
And I figured out some of it. And basically what I broke it down to was it's triplets and eighths and sixteenths.
Sure.
It's really simple stuff. But what's difficult about it is like learning a rudiment.
Yep.
You're learning a rudiment on the drums, and it's like a linear rudiment between your feet and your hands.
Right.
And it's different moves around this and that.
Right.
And so you not only have to learn the rudiment, you have to learn how long it takes you to get to that place.
Right.
And it's difficult, really difficult, because it's linear.
Sure.
And so, and I wanted to learn some of it because I never really saw anybody do anything really musical with it.
Right. Yeah.
And,
I'm right along the path with you.
And no dynamics either.
Right. Everything all one volume.
Right.
Yeah. That's the issue I have with it.
And
I hear it and I go, it'd be so cool if there was dynamics in it.
Right. And I've heard a few guys that have elements of it that use it musically.
Sure.
And I love that when I hear it because it's a whole nother way to look at the drums. And it's opened up a whole other world for me on the drums. It's another place to go. And
Sure.
it is difficult. But these young kids coming up, that's their DNA.
Right. So they didn't. Yeah, they're not doing. Yeah, I know what you mean.
They didn't
if,
go.
if you start there, then
Right.
what's your groove like? What's your pocket like?
Well, a lot of them have a really nice pocket, but how long they can hold it,
Right.
that's another question. But something I read Jocko said in an interview, he said, you can play anything you want as long as you keep the groove going at the same time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really hard to do.
I agree. That's funny. I 100% agree. I look at it like the way I explain to kids when I can. If all you have is the trunk of the tree, I'd rather hear someone that just has a trunk than someone who has branches and not a trunk. I'm like, dude, if your gift is just I'm trunk with a few branches.
Right.
Some people that are great, the truly great ones, the Dennis Chamber, they're an entire tree. But
Right.
I would rather hear someone, if all you got is a nice trunk, I'm good. You know, I'd rather hear that, you know.
My son, he was playing with a band, and he was...
work on the trunk. That's fine.
And he was putting in a lot of stuff. And I said, when you go to the gig tonight, don't play any fills. Maybe a few cymbal crashes. That's it. Just
That's it.
hold the groove all night. See what happens.
Yep.
So I came home, and he said, everybody loved what I did. I got compliments
This is
all
so
night
funny.
long.
This is exactly. I did, not to talk about, I did the exact same thing when I was young and kind of figuring out, trying to get into that zone. I would do gigs. I play with a band. I just brought hat, kick, snare, and one cymbal for like a year.
Right.
And they were like, are you going to bring toms ever? And I'm like, not yet. And then I had a floor tom only.
Right.
And then another year, and finally, like within a few years, I worked my way up to a 4-piece kit, and that's still where I'm at.
Right.
Because I had to do that. I just said, I'm like, exactly, like I'm going to play the gig tonight and play 0 fills ever.
Right.
And see what happens.
And see if you can move the music like that.
Just like that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I end up doing a lot now
So
is
funny.
I'll if I'm playing, where usually I'll get gigs where there isn't any rehearsal a lot of times.
Sure.
And local gigs. And it's fun because as people change what they're playing, instead of changing the groove, I'll just add little things that spice the groove, but don't change it.
Right.
To make the music move. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And I think recording so much, that really kind of put me in that zone anyway, because,
Yeah.
When I
You're
first
thinking like
started
that.
out, I'd put a fill in that I thought was great, and I'd go in and listen to it. It was horrible.
Dude.
It's like, what did you play that for?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So hearing myself back so many times,
Mhm.
I think it helped me a great deal.
I agree. Yeah, I had the same experience. Someone videotaped a gig when I was young. I thought I was so cool. I played all my stuff, and then I watched it, and I was like, no, none of that sounded like I thought it did.
Right.
None of it. I said, next gig, I'm just going to play hat, kick, snare. That was it.
What I started finding out was all the stuff I thought sounded great didn't.
Right.
And all the stuff that I didn't think was so great sounded great.
Flip it. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what recording does, right? It'll, if you can hear it, you'll find out where you're really at and just go, okay, let me focus on that. That's so funny.
And the kids are lucky now because they can set up a recording studio at home and have that experience.
Sure.
With no time limits.
Right.
If they want to do that. you
Crazy.
know. But and not only that, they're filming themselves, seeing themselves. And the only problem I see with that is when we were coming up, if you want to learn something, me personally, I had to slow down a record with my hand to figure it out.
Yeah.
And now that there's YouTube and I can see the guy actually do it, things that I figured out, the way I figured them out was way more complicated than what the guy was actually doing. you know? But the kids, they can see the actual guy doing it now. And as a result, there's not as much individuality between the players coming up now, and I think it's because they're all learning from the same sources, where when you had to slow down a record, you never got it perfect, or I didn't anyway. And
Dude.
you'd get some of it and you'd make it your own and make it into your own thing. And you got a lot of diversity that way.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I do the same thing. I feel like I made a career out of mistakes. I'll listen to somebody play a lick, and I don't think about it. I'll just play what I think it is.
Right.
And I'll come up with something cool, and then I'll work it out and go, that's cool. Then I listen to what it actually was and realize how wrong I was. But I just came up with something that's completely mine because I misheard it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I say, sometimes mistakes, yeah. So, right. But now if you just see someone play it, you play what they play, there's no difference. Now you're the same. You learned it the way they play it. And it's over. Whereas, yeah, I just keep making mistakes.
But every drummer's got their own soul that comes out and they're playing. Any good drummer, and you can almost tell from the heartbeat who it is a lot of times.
Yeah.
And everybody's got that different feel. So I think that's a wonderful thing about the instrument. That, no one. Like I said, no one approaches it the same. No one sets up the same setup or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a cool thing. Yeah.
But I went from Sugar Hill on to, Sugar Hill kind of died. And
but you knew it would.
Yeah.
Was it sooner or later than you thought?
I wasn't prepared for it because... Really what happened was slowly everyone was being replaced, because the sound was changing.
Okay.
I think the first to go were the horns because they started getting synthesizers in to do that.
Okay.
And then one day I went in the studio and there was a drum machine sitting there, DMX. And
you're like, tick, 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 my clock's ticking.
Right. And, Skip and Doug, they felt for me, but at Sugar Hill, no one could really... the deep tones were there, but no one could speak them, And Sylvia, she looked at me, she goes, yeah, Keith, this is Willie. And we don't have to spend any time getting any sounds. We just plug them up. And
right.
We
can fire the engineer now.
And I only had to pay him once. And Willie's time is perfect. And he comes with his own hand claps,
Oh,
and
boy.
She goes, I just love Willie, but I think she really liked me because... that same day, she gave me like 5 or 6 sessions where she wanted live drums on them.
Yeah.
And I realized that she was just trying to keep up with the sound of hip-hop at the time. This great musician, Reggie Griffin, that was working there, he showed me how to work one. So I set about getting one.
Wow.
And so Sugar Hill was over, and then I produced a record called No Sound. With Malcolm X's speeches on it. And that's a whole nother story. But that basically made so much noise, not so much in the States because Joe Robinson killed the record in the States, but I was like the first to do anything like that. And so it kind of spawned a career from me. So the next thing I knew, I was in New York producing for Tommy Boy Records.
Nice.
And
drum machine oriented.
Yeah, it was all drum.
You was there.
It was all drum machine orientated.
You were in the right place at least twice.
Yep. And then, they needed some music to go with it, so I got Skip and Doug in. And the singer that we had, Craig Derry, we were recording for the Force MDs, and no one could control him. Craig is like this big football player type.
Yeah.
He could do anything with his voice. And so I told Tom Silverman that owned Tommy Boy Records, I said, I got just a guy for you to help you out. So I got Craig in there. And Craig's like one of the foremost vocal coaches in the world now for all those young, he's everybody.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so we worked there. And I got a place in New York. And then we started... this guy, Adrian Sherwood, came and got me and took me to England. I did some tracks with him, producer, had his own label. And then I got Skip and Doug to come over there with me, and we started this band Tackhead, which was ahead of the curve. We were using samples, all kinds of stuff. We got a hold of a sampler before anyone had them. They were these things called an AMS.
Okay.
And it was a delay unit. have like an 8-second, 9-second delay.
Oh, okay.
And they used it for radio stations. So if
In case someone swore.
right, they
Gotcha.
could bleep. And the guy at the studio we were working at, he was a genius, and he figured out that if he changed the circuit, you could capture that 8 seconds, and it's really good quality.
Whoa.
So we were making records like pushing buttons, you know. And,
Wow.
And so we did all these records.
Wow, that's crazy.
And everybody loved them. All the stuff we didn't think was commercial took off.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
We started getting written up in, Village Voice and
Yeah.
all these. And we do a
You're at the
track.
cutting edge once again.
Right. We do a track, and Prince would come out with a track with the same exact drum beat that I had done.
Wow.
And but we didn't have a singer, or
Yeah.
anything. It was just samples. And so when we were getting a lot of real notoriety, by this time I had a loft in New York. I was sharing it with Skip and Vernon Reed. This was before Living Color started. He came over. He knew us. And, we were talking about how, this article had just come out. And Vernon said, well, can Tackhead do a gig? And we said, that's a good question.
Yeah, I never thought about it.
So we started figuring out how we could do gigs. And then we started doing gigs. And for about 5-year period after that, we slayed it all over Europe. And
Wow.
everybody was,
Cutting edge technology, kind of.
Yep. By this time, S900 had come out, so I had triggers on every drum.
Yeah,
and, Doug had bass pedals that he triggered with his feet. And then we had Adrian Sherwood dubbing the whole thing out front, so
Yeah,
it was a whole different spectrum out front. And, we'd have, on any given night, there'd be, Smashing Pumpkins, Red Hot Chili Peppers,
So you were
all in
there.
the front row,
Yeah.
seeing what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And our manager kept saying, you got to get a singer,
Oh, wow.
or else you're going to miss the boat.
Whoa.
So we got Bernard Fowler in,
Oh, yeah.
who sings with the Rolling Stones.
Sure.
And amazing vocals.
Yeah.
But by the time we got him in, I remember I worked for Trevor Horn a lot when I was in England.
Oh, that's great. I'm a big fan.
And Trevor told me, he said, Keith, how bands mess up? They have success, and then they get the big record deal, and they change everything.
Wow.
He said what they should do is exactly what they've been doing. So when Tackhead got the big record deal, we changed everything.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And, went right down the tubes.
Oh, wow.
And so then, I stayed in England, and I infiltrated the jazz scene there, played with some great, amazing musicians, and I cut like all kinds of pop records there. I guess I was pretty much first call for quite a while in the UK, and it was interesting because there was a lot of diversity. Because you're kind of in the center of Europe.
And this would have been what year?
Oh, this was like, we did Tackhead up until like 1990.
Okay.
And then that fell apart.
Yeah.
And then Skip and I stayed in England, and we just hired guns, really.
Yeah.
And so, that's how I recorded all the Seal stuff. Trevor Horn called me for loads of sessions.
Wow.
And then I did a bunch of stuff with Annie Lennox, a couple albums with her.
Wow.
And
I'll have to do all right, so I'm going to make a Keith LeBlanc mix. I do these mixes. I post them. I'll do my research. I'll put it all together.
well, really, for me, I've been really lucky. I've just kind of been in the right place at the right time, but it's always been ahead of the curve. I mean,
Yeah.
I did stuff like before I moved to England. I decided I was going to move to England after I'd done the No Sellout record, and I'd been there for a while. I was working for Arthur Baker and
Wow.
Stevie Van Zandt, everybody
Sure.
in the city, and we were like a rhythm section was still needed at that time, and then we did a lot of work with this guy Mark Stewart, who's recently died. And he was doing this industrial type thing that nobody was doing. And all of a sudden, a couple bands came along. There's this band, Ministry.
Yep.
With Al Jorgensen. So me and Adrian went to Chicago, and I showed Al how to use his Fairlight. Because he was doing one bar at a time. He didn't realize that you could chain 8 bars and then improvise over that. It opened up a whole new... But he's a little genius. So he did his album, and then this guy shows up. I get a call from TVT Records, this guy Trent Reznor. And he wants me to...
I was going to ask you about that.
He wants me to do this record. And
wow.
So he shows up with these cassette tapes, you know. And so I sat in a room in Unique Studios with him for, like, you know, because he did the programming. Well, he ran the computer. I did the programming. And so I structured the whole album for him. And he went back to Ohio, put guitars and vocals on it.
Sure.
And then came back. And then I spent a couple weeks mixing it for him, which was a 9 Inch Nails album. And
Pretty Hate Machine.
Right, first one. And I thought the stuff was garbage. I did the best job I could, but I didn't like it because to me it was like a ripoff of what we were doing with Mark Stewart, but not a very good one.
Right.
That's who they wanted to copy.
Sure.
I think that's why he wanted me to do it.
Sure.
So, anyway.
It's because you were ahead. You know, it felt like he was behind, all right.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's why...
That's amazing.
I recorded for REM and REM and people like that because it was something new. And anyway, I did the whole album for him. They wanted to give me publishing. And I wanted to move to England. I said, no, I need the cash. So So I hit him up for some cash. I went to England. I was working there for about maybe 4 years before I realized that album was massive. You know, I wasn't.
Yeah, but nobody knew that.
I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah, right.
And it didn't really. The penny really didn't drop till Trent called me up and he wanted me and Adrian to make some samples for him. So we made him a couple reels full of samples.
Wow.
Just made them out of whatever we could get our hands on.
Yeah.
And then I heard the theme song for the movie Seven.
Oh.
And there were all the samples we had made for him. But what he did with them was pure genius.
Yeah, sure.
That's when I really said, oh, Trent's really good.
Okay.
But, you know.
Wow.
But, you know, I did a lot of that, you know. Annie Lennox wanted to write some tunes with me, and I had a session in London. I said, I can't do it. I got to go back to London. I should have canceled that session and stayed there and wrote some tunes with her. But, you know, my life is like an endless array of just trying to do the right thing and missing the boat, you know, or being ahead of the boat. Like
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, you're ahead of the boat. Wow.
Yeah, and I think it's because I never did anything for money, really. I just did it for the fun of doing it.
Yeah, right. Trying to figure out what's next.
Well,
like you're saying about that with your drumming, it's the same thing. If you think, hey, I got this, I'm good, I know everything, then you're not going to stay excited and engaged in trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah, it's like you have to be curious about what you might come up with. And,
wow.
But, it just keeps me here, keeps me going. I try to play every day.
Yeah.
Because that's where it all started. And, but I did get into production, and it's gotten a lot easier now. Mm-hmm. I've been fortunate to see, there was a time in England when we were doing Tackhead. New piece of gear would come out every week.
Yeah.
So we'd buy it.
Yeah.
See whether we liked it. And there was a time when I had like a book this thick of the starting instructions to almost every machine because people would want me to use their stuff. And
right. Hey, it's killer.
But just...
Well, what are you doing now?
Well, I'm living in Meriden, Connecticut.
Sure.
With my wife, and I've got a nice house on a hill.
Cool.
And I got a little studio in it, and I just record from there. And I just released Well, it hasn't actually come out yet. I just did an album. And this is the first album that basically, Marshall Chess was an old friend, the guy that owns Chess Records.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard of him.
Because I met him at Sugar Hill, actually.
Yeah, right.
Funny enough.
Can imagine that.
Joe Robinson had bought the Chess catalog and didn't know what to do with it. So he hired Marshall.
Whoa.
And Marshall actually financed the No Sellout record that I did. So Marshall really had a lot to do with me getting in the door as a producer. So when I lived in England for quite a while, and then I moved back to the States about 2002, something like that. And I called Marshall, and I said, "You got anything interesting?" And he goes, "Well, I've been trying to get people to do something with the old Chess tunes, but they're all on 2-track tape."
Oh, boy.
And there weren't any separator programs or anything. So I said, well, let me give it a try. So I ended up just cutting out all the vocals and writing new tracks and then putting the vocals in.
Wow.
And he really liked it. And I thought
so like Chess reimagined or something.
Right. So we took it further. I said, let's do it with live instruments. So I plotted it all out, rewrote all the tracks that we had used, and got Bernard Fowler to sing. Like, I plotted out the vocals like almost in a rhythm type thing. To me, it was just like one big drum section, but Bernard managed to pull it off. I don't know how he did it.
Wow.
And he'd even get close to the timbre of the real guy doing it. But the rhythms were very complex that he had to do. So, yeah, I was wondering whether it would even work. It was kind of groundbreaking. And then I got Skip McDonald did most of the guitars on the album, and I got this great bass player, Paul Nowinski, upright player. He's really was perfect for the job. And I got Eric Ailes on a few tracks.
Wow.
And I got Mono Neon on a track, and then this great female bass player from India, Mohini Day, on a track. And so the album's we released one single, and it's going to be out the 23rd of this month.
Hey, that's
the
cool.
whole album is called New Moves. So
okay. All right.
And now I've started on the second one because they want me to do another one. But we'll see how it flies, because it's kind of a combination of, the only thing that's blues is the lyrics.
Yeah, right.
Really.
At this
So
point,
it's,
yeah.
and it's really like, if I had to describe it, put it in a genre, it'd be hip hop, funk, jazz, blues.
Oh.
Kind of.
Well, that narrows it down. Yeah.
So
yeah, I can't wait to hear it. That sounds interesting.
So I've just been doing projects at home, and then with the lockdown, I bought some more gear, and
yeah, why not?
And really, at this point now, I really do it. I've always done it for the love of doing it, but now I do it because it's fun.
Yeah, right.
And interesting, and it's so much easier now.
Yeah, right.
Because
yeah,
stuff that used to take days.
Yeah.
Like, I remember Trevor Horn, working with that guy. I learned one thing. He had money to do this.
Sure.
But he was the first guy I saw with 64 channels of digital.
Yeah.
First guy that would want to punch in drums.
Yeah.
Just groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And if he had a song that he was trying to do, he'd do maybe 20, 30 different versions.
Yeah, right.
Till he got the one that really did it for him. Now you can try that at home. You can do 50 versions of a song till you get the one that really works.
Yeah, right. And
So,
he was doing that.
He was doing that back when it was expensive.
Yeah, I was just going to say, he was burning money, burning it.
Oh, yeah, but he owned his own studio. So,
Yeah.
But still, there's a cost there, engineers and everything.
Sure.
But I think he was probably the most fun producer I ever worked for, because one time, you would have loved this.
Yeah.
I went in to do I think the session was for Paul McCartney or somebody. And I went in, and he had my drum set set up. My roadie had set it up. That's when I had a roadie.
Sure.
And then he had 3 other drum sets, vintage kits, set up, all mic'd.
Yeah.
And he had me jumping from kit to kit.
Just to see. Hey, man.
I said, wow, this is the most fun you can have without getting arrested.
Yeah, right. Sure. Wow. You know what? I don't want to run out. I want you to come back, though. You got to come back because we have more to talk about. I don't want the cameras to run out in the middle of the most important stuff. But this was awesome. This was really awesome. Will you come back?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you got to come back.
Yeah.
All right, because I don't want to cut you. I do not want to cut you off at all. I don't want to end up running out.
It's just,
So killer.
It's easy. It's hard and it's easy to talk about yourself. You never know where it's going to go.
No, you got to come back. We got to get more into it. Let me ask you real quick wrap up questions. Desert Island albums, a few. Are you familiar with this idea?
No. Oh, you.
Like if you could take a handful and only listen to those for the rest of your life, that helps give us an idea of what your thing is.
Okay.
Is it possible?
Yep. Get Miles Davis, Jack Johnson.
What?
Steely Dan, Asia.
Sure.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Probably Billy Cobham, Spectrum.
Hey.
And Herbie Hancock's first Headhunters album.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah. Cool. Desert Island food. What could you eat every day without variation? Anything that comes to mind? Fish. Anyway.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Yep. I could eat fish every day.
Is there one show that you remember seeing that changed your life? That you saw, like a live show that you saw and you just said this?
I think seeing actually 2 shows.
Okay.
Seeing Pat Martino with Kenwood Denard.
Yep. Yeah, you were saying.
But the first time that happened, it was seeing Jack Scarangello with Fabulous Rhinestones.
Yeah, you were saying back in the day.
In Bushland Park. That definitely. And then the third one that really changed everything was seeing Mahavishnu Orchestra with Billy Cobham, which no one. It was I think they did their first gig at Wesleyan University.
Wow. You'll have to look that up.
So we went to go see Dreams, was the name of the band we were supposed to see, but they opened up for them. And no one had heard of them.
Yeah, right. And you're just like, what?
And McLaughlin came and goes, listen to the beautiful silence. And then all hell broke loose.
Yeah. That's so funny. That's amazing. All right, well, Keith LeBlanc, you got to come back.
Hey, man, how'd I do? Do okay?
You did great. Are you kidding me? Yeah, no, this is really, really very interesting. Dave, this is gonna blow your mind when you hear this one. Yeah, this is awesome. All right, I'm gonna have you back. I got a million Trevor Horn questions. I got a million questions. So you got to make sure you come back.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'll let you know.
Definitely. When you get a cold spot, someone drops out, just give me a call.
I will. No,
right.
for sure. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna press the button. I don't want to go, but we have to go at some point. All right, Keith LeBlanc was here. Drummer. Historic. You're historic. Come to find out.
Thanks for saying that.
Oh, well, hey, man. This is John Peckman. This is a truthful podcast. It's the truth. Keith LeBlanc, historic drummer. We're here, Connecticut Valley, School of Music and Dance, beautiful downtown Portland, Connecticut. You can't miss us. Come over the bridge. Take a right. Take a left. Take a right. Take a left. Go around in circles like I am. All right, thanks a lot. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time, kids. That is all.
If you'd like to start your own podcast, give us a call at Connecticut Valley School of Music and Dance. Our professionally designed podcast space is here for all your recording needs. Rent out our studio to do interviews with up to 4 people, to record audiobooks, social media content, and all other recorded material. Our rentals include a private studio along with our professional-grade podcasting equipment and We can customize your output to whatever your needs are. We also have green screen capabilities, which will expand to video capability if you so wish. So check us out here at convalley.net/podcast.